Well, it's been about 3 months since I first started this. My official, cutoff date for when I absolutely had to start working on this was January 25th, and it's currently April 30th. So, yeah, it took me a long time to make this intro sequence. I'm very glad that I finally have something to show for it, but dear God. So, I'm going to go over a little bit of the stuff that went into the making this, and basically kind of be repeating some info that I've already shared in other videos, like the Isle of the Winds LP, just to kind of have it all in one place. So if you have been following any of the progress of this, then you're probably going to hear a lot of the same stuff. But if you haven't, then this will hopefully be interesting. I just figured it was a good idea to kind of get it all out in one spot here. So, God, where to start with this? The reason it took so long to get as far as I did is just a combination of work being really bad recently, having to keep up with other stuff with like my video schedule, and also this just being a freaking pain in the ass to put together. I'm not complaining, and I also don't regret having done it. I just kind of needed to explain, like, if you don't realize how much work actually went into this, you're going to now kind of see how, like, what it was. Because it's one thing to kind of put together a basic animation. It's another thing to implement it in Zelda Classic, because, like, Jesus Christ. So, I guess I'll just kind of start from the beginning here. If you don't know anything about the program, I'd like to direct you to the bottom left here. This is the map. Basically, this area is a 16 by 8 grid of screens. This is the size of the Zelda 1 overworld. And I have two of these entire maps filled up with assets for the intro and title screen. That is how much space this took up. The total number of maps I can have in the game is, I think, 255. I'm actually going to check. Yeah. So, I've taken up basically 1% of it. Like, it's less than 1% because it's 250, but whatever. And I also feel like I've made about 1% of the game by this point, which is sad to think about, but I think it's going to speed up from here. So, why did this take up so much space? It's because animating anything in Zelda Classic is awful. I'm going to explain the intro sequence again in a little bit. I'll get to that once I actually pull up the game itself, because it'll be easier to talk about that way. Let me talk about this intro quote, because it's a bit kind of weird, and I first want to say that I don't actually know who Maynard James Keenan is. Apparently he's a singer, but that's all I know. I've not listened to anything from him. I didn't know him prior to using this quote. The reason I have this here is because my intro sequence is very heavily inspired by Super Metroid. It obviously has the same music in it, but it has the dramatic lighting, monologue, I guess, and then the black and white flashback sequences. And that game opens with basically just a line, the last Metroid is in captivity, the galaxy is at peace. And I wanted to have something like that in mind. This quote does have relevance to the game. I'm not going to say in what way specifically, but I picked it for a reason. I was originally going to use something like Luna Lovegood said in Deathly Hallows, was just the Ravenclaw door is which came first, the Phoenix or the Flame, and she says, I think that a circle has no beginning, or something, and it didn't really work, unfortunately, the way it was worded, so I found this one, it fit better. But anyway, that's what that is, and the reason it's this super dramatic, flaming text on a black background, and actually here you can, yeah, water. I should probably explain the water thing too. The reason it's like that is because this is actually your introduction to the game's villain, in a way. The weird digitized voice, the gloomy like dramatic text. That's going to be kind of his signature once he starts showing up later in the game. And I don't want to say too much about the villain, but it's called the Armageddon virus. It is related somewhat tangentially to the weird, like, glitchy computer thing from BA2, Big Head. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's like sort of related in a way. And as you can see or guess from the title of the game, and the fact that it's glitching the hell out, it is going to very heavily play into the storyline here, where basically the world is getting corrupted, and you need to figure out a way to stop it. So, that's about as much as I want to say on that subject. And, yeah, this opening cutscene, good lord. So, I've learned a lot of things about Zelda Classic just during the time that I've spent on this, just in terms of mechanics. Just weird crap like if you warp into water on a screen with text, you'll be standing above the water instead of swimming. But if you warp into water on a screen without text, then you'll load into the water, like you'll go in the water no problem. Just really freaking stupid stuff like that. And the reason I have the water, it's actually on basically all these intro screens, is in the intro you're not going to have any items because obviously you're starting the game just fresh and you're going to have no inventory. But I figured it would be good practice to get into the habit of doing this, because for any cutscenes later on in the game, I do want to prevent the player from using items, because I find it really annoying. Like, I did this all the time in my Dr. Wily's Revenge LP, where I would just kind of throw the boomerang in the middle of a cutscene and it would just pop out from behind random assets and shit. And you can also play the whistle to freeze time for a few seconds and throw off screen transitions that are on a timer. It's just really annoying, so I figured I'd get in the habit of doing it now. And that, of course, leads to its own whole set of problems, but we don't have to talk about that right now. So instead, let's talk about the frame-by-frame animation that went into this garbage. Because just the burning the map scene is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 screens. Most of them lasting 5 frames probably. What is it? 8. 8 frames for this one. This one, because it sits on an animation for a few seconds, you get to look at this one for 80 frames, so it's a little bit over a second. But yeah, and then scenes like this one, I really did put too much, too many in-between frames on these, honestly. I should have made the movement a bit jerkier just to save space, but I don't know, I kind of like how it turned out. And also, just to point out my own perfectionism, when I made these scenes, I basically recorded the original footage from BA2 or whatever, and then kind of analyzed it frame by frame just to make sure I was getting everything right. And you'll notice here the statues on the bottom actually look at you at different times. And that's because that's how that worked in the original game, just because they follow your movement and you're not quite centered between them. So it's something stupid like that. Nobody's going to notice, but I like doing the little extra touches like that. It just kind of is neat to me. That, and my other favorite bit is when you attack the snake here, it cuts the grass in front of you. I love stuff like that. But yeah, these freaking enemies. Here, Link's movement in this scene is way jerkier than the Bargo movement in the last one. And that's because I just could not be bothered to make any more screens, and I'm glad I didn't, because I filled up both maps with this. I was concerned for a bit I wasn't going to be able to fit the title screen into this map. I thought I was going to have to make a third one. But, yeah, this stuff with the enemies, I would have made them not appear in one pile, but that's how they did it in the original game, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to just mimic this exactly as it is. So for stuff like this, this screen is made up of 5 layers. We have the basic screen, which is just this, and also some poofs. Don't ask why. Then we have the snakes, or ropes. Then we have the moblins. Then we have the keys. Then we have Link. Link probably could have been combined into one of those, but yeah, he already had his own layer anyway. I think I had just borrowed it from... Yeah, I had to borrow it from this one, so it's like, whatever. And then you'll actually notice as they move apart, like as the enemies move, we actually lose a couple layers. And that's because I really did try to compress these as much as possible. So it's like we've got the 3 different enemies here, and then they move a little bit. And then this one, like now I start putting Link on the same screens as the enemies. And it's like here, the keys move far enough away where I can combine them with these, and then they're all separate in this one. It's like, I don't really need to go over all this specifically, but it's just, it kind of goes to show, like, the shortcuts you have to take, and just, like, how you have to save room in this when possible, because there's a lot of crap that you have to fit into this. This one's one of my favorites, just you walk in. Nope. I wasn't even sure how I was going to do these, because I was worried for a bit that I was going to have to make these little bouncing Bikdips also animated frame by frame instead of just like looping animation on this, because this, like, as much as I said about like the previous section how I want the game this to look exactly like the original game, like here this isn't how they normally move. Like they bounce in different directions and they turn into smoke when they're moving upwards for some reason and stupid shit like that. But like whatever, at this point I'm just so sick of dealing with it. I love the Pikachu. And then this bit, I thought that was pretty cool. This was fun to put together also, just the having to redraw this screen but lower by 1 every time. And I swear I need to stop pointing out every tiny little thing, but like these darker squares were actually kind of annoying to set up. Like I had to do that, and then yeah, I don't know, whatever. So that's the intro sequence. Here I have like the classic Pokemon style, like shrink down into the player character thing. And then we've got the warp ring. So that ties into our title screen, which if you've played the game or seen anything of it, it's immediately recognizable that this is the Sonic 3 title screen. If you haven't, then well, you know now. So why Sonic 3? Honestly, it's mostly just because it's iconic looking, and I just wanted it to be based off of a something 3, because Bikdip's Adventure 2 had the title screen based off of Mega Man 2, kind of. That one was also really bad looking, but whatever. But yeah, the warp rings are actually going to play a role in the game. That's a stolen asset from Sonic Mania, for the record. And the sparkles behind this are from Kirby Superstar, actually. But so yeah, there's like a bunch of different inspirations that are going to be going into BA3, and without giving away plot details, obviously I'm not going to say what all of them are, but the main bunch, aside from just Zelda 1, obviously, because it has the engine I'm using, the other main Zelda game that I'm pulling from is Majora's Mask, just because it's my favorite one. But there's also going to be a lot of Earthbound, Undertale, Mario RPG, Kid Rad, and then, surprisingly, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is actually somewhat playing a role in this game. You may wonder how. You'll find out eventually, don't worry about it. But those are the main ones. There's a few others just that I'd be kind of pulling stuff from for small areas or whatever, but I won't mention those for now. But yeah, so that's the title screen. It was kind of a pain to put together because I had to, again, link together all these screens like this, and then I actually just finished the glitchy versions of the screen earlier today. I'm a fan of A.A. Mitch in the Glitix X and A Glit Glit Glitix of the Mix. Those are both pretty good titles also. But yeah, if you want to see the individual assets for these, this was, believe it or not, actually drawn pixel by pixel by me. I didn't rip it from the Sonic 3 title screen, though I did copy it pretty heavily. This obviously I made from scratch. This, basically same thing. I didn't actually steal the Sonic 3 banner. I just heavily copied it. The shape of the banner itself is almost exact. I did copy that almost like 1 pixel at a time. The text I did from hand, though. The 3 I also did from hand. It looks like the Sonic 3, whatever. There's the reflected clouds in the water. There's a lot of stuff that you might not notice at first. But anyway, that's enough, like, filleting myself, basically. I'm not going to keep, like, saying, oh man, this was so awesome, because it really isn't that much that I did, but whatever. So let's go back and actually talk about this intro sequence, just for anybody who hasn't seen this. So, when you start the game up, this is normally what happens. It counts for 10 seconds, and then you get this. So this is Haley. She's not specifically a tutorial character. She's actually going to have a fairly major role in the game later on. But we'll get to that when we get to that. I'm not going to talk more about it now than necessary. And so this is sort of my way of forcing the player to follow a few rules that I have set up. Again, I've explained this before, but I'm going to be going over it again just because I'd rather have it all in one place. So a lot of this is just kind of checking settings that you have, because you can have the transparent layers turned off, and if you do, then it's going to make stuff not look right. So here I'm just like, hey, do you have them on? And I do, so I'm going to say yes. If I say no, it's just going to basically say to go into the menu and change it. Actually, let's just say no anyway. And then this is, yeah, the screensaver, because the screensaver can interrupt cutscenes also, so I just want to make sure that doesn't pop up. So this one, I do actually hear it. I'm not supposed to, but that's because I haven't made the custom sound effects yet. So if you say yes, then it basically just tells you to set that up. I do need to still have the Haley voice done. I don't know who I'm going to have do that. I guess if you are a girl and want to do it, then leave a comment and I will get back to you, because it does have to be a female voice. But other than that, I am not going to be too picky about it. I figured it would be kind of like sort of stereotypically nerdy sounding. I don't know. But I basically only need like 2 things recorded. I just need like a sort of kind of like babbling thing, and sort of like the Banjo-Kazooie talking sound. That's going to be the replacement for the secret jingle. And then there's going to be like an instructional line at the end of this. But anyway, see how you do that. Let's load it up again. And there's a couple more screens of that, just basically telling you how to set stuff up. We'll go through those real quick. You actually can't skip this text. Setting this stuff up was another freaking project in itself, but I don't know if I want to get into all that at the moment. I might after this. I'll see how I feel. But, and this is just saying, dude, I forgot it did this part. Okay, so do you hear the Zelda Secret jingle? If I have the thing set up, then the answer is no. So we say no. Here's my idiot detector, basically. Like, no, I don't hear it, because I don't hear anything. So, do you hear my voice? No. And then we get the epic eye roll. That stupid eye roll actually took me like an hour to set up. It was way more effort than it needed to be. So, let's do this bit again. Sammy, do you hear my voice? Yes, I do. And see, here's where the other line I need recorded is. It's just going to basically be, well, I'll say it as it pops up, I guess. So yeah, here we're just going to get like the rescued Zelda jingle. Instead of this, you're going to be hearing something like, When you start the game up and see the counting numbers, press and hold down on the number 3, press and hold right on 7, and then hit F6 to continue. And then, yeah. Oh, what the hell? Okay, I need to get rid of this text. That's for something else. Also, the Zelda like that bit I can't really get rid of, unfortunately, like the Bargo Zelda Triforce thing. I can probably change the Zelda sprite or get rid of it, but whatever. So yeah, it tells you to do all that, and the reason for that is just a way of basically forcing you to have the right sound effects, but also to prevent you from using the wrong version. This one I don't know if I want to show off just because it's kind of annoying. But basically, if you load up the game in the wrong in the wrong version, due to the way that it has like weird continue bugs, it will actually throw you onto a death screen when you do this, and it'll basically just say like, hey, you're using the wrong version, download the right one. But yeah, if you do this correctly, you do down on 3, right on 7, and it's actually a little bit lenient. You can do it like a second later if you need to. Hit continue, and then when you do that, it basically sends you to the intro. And the way that works is just through it basically puts a staircase in this spot. Like when you walk, I'll show it off. Let's see, where's the screen? It's yeah, here's what the screen looks like. If you press any direction other than the ones that you're told to, you bump into a spike and die. And if you walk in the directions at the correct time, then you can pass through the what are just currently flickering letters. That's just, don't worry about that. Basically, it lets you walk over those, you hit the button, and then when you hit the button, it turns the spawning location into a staircase, and then that warps you to the next screen, basically. There's a lot of complicated stuff like that in here, like the way that the text appears. I have this as basically just a green square that kind of fills up this space through combo cycling, and then I have a layer over that with blackness that covers up everything but the letters, so it like fills in incrementally. On these screens where it's like yes and no, you can't actually press the direction at first because you spawn in a place where you're surrounded by solid blocks, but then the solid blocks will disappear at the same time that the letters fill in. It's all kind of timed just in a way that I don't want you to skip the text, basically. Oh, and also if you go to the opening quote and hold left at the end of this, you already saw this text, but not in the place where it belonged. Yeah, if you hold left, it lets you do this. You can just skip the whole intro, and that's just if you have seen it already and don't want to do it again, then it gives you the option to kind of go through it a little bit faster. But that's mostly it. I've already talked way more than I needed to about all this, but I just kind of wanted to show off everything that went into it. There's probably even some extra stuff in here that I'm forgetting about, but whatever. So let me get to the title screen again just to have something to look at. And I'm going to mention one other thing before I'm done here. Basically, even though I've already talked endlessly about this, there's obviously still a lot of stuff I've not said about the game in this video. And if you have any questions, just stuff you're curious about, I will be happy to answer them in the comments. That doesn't go just for the intro, but also just sort of the plans for the game in general, because, like I said, I do have basically all of it planned out. I do not want to answer any questions relating to plot details, maybe a few really vague ones, or, like, unimportant ones, but obviously I'm not going to, like, give away the storyline or, like, the end game or anything like that. But smaller stuff I don't mind answering. I'm curious to see what people think of this, so I guess that's it. I've talked for long enough. I will see you when there's more to show off in 6 years.